Hello. Thank you for listening to and watching You Had Options. This episode of Adam Easterling from the very good band ORTHODOX out of Nashville, Tennessee. Great conversation. Got to spend some time with them on the road with Wielded Steel a couple months ago. Yeah, great group of guys, that ORTHODOX. Also, Adam, great guy to talk to. Great conversation we had. Talked about what big pants music means. Just great combo. Yeah. Definitely check out the dates they have. They have just been announced with Comback Kid for the 20-year anniversary of Wake the Dead. The Comback Kid album's incredible. Wake the Dead should be the new national anthem for Canada. Great talk. Go like and follow ORTHODOX on all the social medias. ORTHODOX TN. Go to one of their shows coming up. Great live show. They're very fun to watch. Go follow You Had Options at You Had Options. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy. Adam, hello.
What's up?
Thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm great, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. So for the dummies that don't know who you are, you're the singer for ORTHODOX, the very good Nashville big pants music band. I saw.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is how we prefer to be referred to as. So
I did a little bit of research for this.
Okay.
I did see you like to call it big pants music. Is that where'd that come from?
When we were writing the last record, Learning to Dissolve, a lot of it was like Austin's at his computer with his guitar, and he would be writing riffs, programming drums, whatever. We'd all be sitting on a couch behind him or in chairs around it, whatever. And the way he would like sell parts is he'd be like, "Oh, this is the big like side to side, whatever goofy stuff." But then he wrote this. I think it was when I want to say it was when he brought us the opening riff for our song "Soaking Nerves," which is very like Coal Chamber-esque.
Okay.
He was like, "Oh, this is like the big pants jump part." He's like, big pants music, big pants, like jumping up and down. And I was like, "Oh, that's hilarious." And so,
whatever the hell that means. Yeah.
And so whenever we put Soaking Nerves out, we had done the whole like trying to be visibly serious about our craft kind of stuff, which didn't really reflect how we are personality wise super well. And especially when you see us live, like we just have fun. We don't act like we're not playing breakdowns and screaming at people.
Yeah.
So whenever we put the song "Soaking Nerves" out, I just put as the caption, like, "If you're not wearing big pants, don't even turn this fucking song on."
Yeah.
And Revolver took that and put a PR that says ORTHODOX brings big pants music with new song "Soaking Nerves." And I was like, I guess this is a thing that we're going to run with now. And so we took that, made a shirt that says ORTHODOX big pants music, and just had a picture of like hysterically large jeans on the back. And then our manager ran with that all the way to Jinko sending us free shit. So
that's what I was leading. That was a leading question.
I figured
the Jinko's collab. I was wondering how that worked. Yeah.
It really was just our manager did some digging around, found one of their creative directors on Instagram, followed him, started courting him, and then just started pitching like, "Hey, here's what this band does." And I think Jinko's been kind of like absent of the like metal scene for a little while.
Sure,
It's always alternative, but it's not what it was in the early 2000s. And I don't think they're trying to do that because they're smart. They know it's not there like it was then.
Yeah.
But I think this creative director, he's an LA guy, and I think he is literally just brought in from the merchandising optics perspective. And he even asked, like, is the heavy music scene aware of Jinko? And I was like, that's hilarious.
1,000,000%. Yes.
Because wow.
Yeah.
And so just kind of courted him into being like, hey, we'll make sure we tag you in a bunch of posts. Just send us some stuff. It hasn't really done a whole lot since then. We haven't had a whole lot. We kind of were like, look, you threw us a huge bone. They sent us like a lot of money worth of product for us to do like a shoot and such with. So we haven't really gone back to them because we haven't had anything new worth doing it for. But like we're about to start setting up music videos, new album cycle and all that stuff. So we're probably going to poke the bear and be like, hey, could use some new pants if you got some laying around.
Yeah, well,
so we'll see if it happens.
Yeah, I do love y'all's like Jinko shoots. Like the pictures I've seen are pretty great. Is that's got to be like the biggest or the weirdest like endorsement, right? That you guys have.
Or I don't even know that it's that weird. I feel like it makes a lot of sense.
It makes for sure.
I think it was definitely the biggest surprise because we're not
surprised.
We're not like we're definitely instrument endorsement worthy, but brand like major brand recognition. Even if I don't know if you'd even call Jinko's more of a boutique than a major at this point, but it's not like we got Adidas. But you wouldn't be surprised. You're never surprised to see Turnstile doing something with Converse.
Sure,
but to see Orthodox do something with Jinko was kind of like
I think it's cool.
What?
It's great.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I think they're like you're saying, or they're kind of like on a comeback. Or I'd never heard of them again until recently. You know, the past couple of years. Like
a lot of people thought they disbanded.
Yeah,
they didn't think they were still around, and I was like, no, they still have a large catalog. I think when the demand dropped, and I might be talking right out of my ass here, but I think they might have done a little like lower inventory or like made to order type stuff because like nobody was really buying them for a while, at least not in my circle. I know they never went away in like the goth circles and things like that, but in the last few years, it's baggy clothes are making a comeback and all this. And so Jinko's naturally people want everything has to be vintage all the time. They're like, how can I wear something old and it look like the modern style? And that's the perfect set of clothes for that. It's just Jinko. So
so did you grow up in Nashville?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think whenever you guys probably get this on the road whenever you're like, oh, we're from Nashville, we're a band touring around, you're at whatever, the Pilot or whatever, telling people, they're probably like, oh.
No, we're not. No, we're not.
or if, I don't know, if somebody's like, I'm sure somebody thinks that doesn't know anything about heavy music or whatever, they hear you're from Nashville, they're probably like, oh, you guys are like a country band.
Do
you get that
at your first impression? But if you like look at us as individuals, I don't think anybody would ever. Maybe you could see me or Mike or Ben, I guess, maybe. But I mean, you see us with Shiloh and Austin, and you think country music. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But I mean, we definitely, if you just meet us and you hear country or you hear Nashville, you just assume that it is the country music mecca of the world. But if I tell people that we're a band, which I try to just leave that conversation.
Sure. Yeah, it opens up.
Because I just don't. I think I'm just kind of over talking about it, not over being in it, but like explaining to people that I'm never going to see again.
Right. Yeah. I'm
like, oh, if I tell you what this is, and you're Brenda checking me out for my Gatorade and chips at the Pilot, you're not going to listen to it and be like, I need to go back and listen to this band again. Because you're going to fucking hate it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But yeah, if they're like, oh, what kind of music? Oh, we're a metal band. That's the extent of it.
Yeah.
And if they further inquire, like, when you say metal, do you mean like Nine Inch Nails or do you mean like Slayer? Then I'm like, oh, okay.
This person knows what they're talking about. At least be like,
have you heard of Korn or Slipknot? Because that's the most relatable thing.
Yeah.
So
so the like scene in Nashville, is there any like bleed over of the country people come over to heavier stuff, or?
I think the ironic part is that
opposite way.
A lot of country music acts have prior hardcore kids, either on their crew or in their band.
Yeah,
I mean, the original bassist for Orthodox, Zachariah, plays with a girl named Tierra Whack, who she just was featured on like the Beyonce country record.
That's cool.
He also tours with a guy named Kebmo, which is like an old folk country blues guy, like multi-Grammy winning artist. He did a crossover, like a CMT Crossroads with Rascal Flatts and I don't remember who else it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's the ironic part, is I think it actually kind of goes the other way. I think when young kids really get into heavy music, it kind of you feel the counterculturism of it a bit more, where you're like, I'm not into anything but this, and so you kind of push back against the normal crowds of like country music, pop music, things like that. Yeah. There was a moment in time where I didn't listen to any of that.
Sure.
And as I've gotten older and just given so much less of a fuck, I in the last few years have super dove like back into country music, not like modern pop,
like Renegade,
but like actually like I think I was a top 1.1% listener of Sturgill Simpson this year on Spotify. Nice. Like really dove back into that. But in terms of country people coming to the shows, I'm sure they show up. I mean, I met Jelly Roll outside of the end once. That's cool. You barely really consider him country at this point, but he's at the Country Music Awards, so he counts for something. And but yeah, I don't know that if there's a lot of country music people there, I don't usually know about it.
Sure.
They're definitely not at the front.
Right. They're not at the barricade. Yeah. Like coming up in the Nashville, was heavy music, was that scene pretty decent whenever you were coming up?
It was decent, and it was completely different than it is now. I started going to shows in 2008, something around then.
Sure.
And it was like in the height of, are you from Bama, like the Southeast?
Yeah, I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, on the coast, like in between. Yeah.
So you remember when the Southeast, like the bread and butter of the Southeast was Christcore?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. That was me. Yeah.
That was what we had. We had we had like the goofy metalcore bands. We had Scream the Prayer started here every year. Like it was, our biggest band was A Plea for Purging.
Sure. Yeah.
Closely followed by As Hell Retreats,
Okay.
And then there was a venue here called Rocketown back in the day. I don't know if you ever went.
No. So
Rocketown was a venue that was started by the Michael W. Smith Foundation, who's like this praise and worship singer.
Okay.
And it was a venue in a skate park, and every show was there. It was either there or it was at this place that was literally 2 blocks down the road, total opposite culture, called the Muse. And Rocketown was like this safe space. They didn't allow stage diving because somebody got like annihilated at I think a Figure 4 show or something.
Sure, yeah.
And they got sued. So like, well, we're not going to do that anymore. So, that's where the majority of the shows went to, at least in terms of metalcore, things like that. And we didn't really get a ton of hardcore shows. There just wasn't. I mean, we got them. It just wasn't as big of a deal.
Sure.
The local scene didn't have as much of it. At least somebody may hear this and be like, this guy wasn't around, he's an idiot. But to my understanding of the scene, there was not a ton of it. And if there was, I was there. But it was a lot of, straightened haired, skinny jean,
sure,
jogging in place metalcore bands. And that's what we had for a while. And it was a very strong scene to where when we would have like, little local festival things, you'd have 300 to 500 kids there consistently, where the headliners were like local bands. Which was a little interesting for me when I look back in hindsight. Like, I looked at these local bands who played the same big stage as the bands that toured through, and I kind of had this weird misperception of the actual size of what our local bands were versus these touring bands that were coming through. But I think it was also even easier to have that back then because there wasn't this oversaturation of Spotify and things like that.
Social media
social media wasn't around, so all you really had to know about shows was
MySpace,
flyers around time, or MySpace. And so when these were the 5 bands that were on every show, naturally they grew these larger local followings. But that was kind of the scene, was big local support. And you had Rocketown, which had a little cafe up at the top, which had probably a 200 cap room. You had a smaller stage downstairs, which was like 250 maybe, and then you had the big room, which I think was 750. And then they moved to a different building where it had a larger big room. It was like 12 to 13, and then a smaller stage that was, I think, a 500 maybe. And then another like flex room, as they called it, that was like 100 cap. And then down the road was the Muse, which was a literal black cinder block building. Right behind it was an adult bookstore. Across the other street was a Crazy Horse strip club. And it was, you couldn't tell me that was a 100 cap room, but like I saw Suffocation in Whitechapel with like 400 people crammed in there. Or like Winds of Plague, Despised Icon, TUI Backtrack, like all that shit was crammed in that room. And that room was, there are no rules. If you have a problem, take it outside. Like that was what that place was. I learned how to fight at the Muse, essentially. So that was what our scene was growing up. You had these weird, also deathcore shows back then were like, I don't know if it was like this down in Alabama, but like deathcore shows were scary back then. Like fights happened often at deathcore shows. Carnifex, Suicide Silence, like those type, Molotov Solution, those bands, when they came around, it was like, just be ready and know where your friends are, because like it got bad.
It's so crazy. Yeah, it's so crazy to think of back on shows and like, people just get fucked up, beat up, or whatever. And
it's so ironic because like nowadays is like the deathcore shows are the. And sorry if you're one of those kids, but your shit's soft, buddy. It's kind of goofy.
It was similar upbringing like down in Mobile, whereas you're going to shows at like there was a coffee house called the Ugly Mug, which was run by a church, and so it's like, and that's how like I kind of got my parents to let me go to shows. It was like, oh, it's at a fucking church, but it's it's kids spin kicking and doing all types of shit.
My first show was Haste the Days, Scary Kids, Scaring Kids, Drop Dead Gorgeous, Gwen Stacy, and As Hell Retreats. And I was able to go because As Hell Retreats was a local Christian metal band.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next show that I went to was Stream the Prayer. And I was like, hey, these are all Christian bands. Meanwhile, I got my shit rocked during With Blood Comes Cleansing. Like, it was, that's long-winded answer of what was the scene like when I was coming up.
It's interesting to think back on, especially like you guys being a touring group, and like the difference between thinking back on shows you used to go to, like you were saying, like, oh, this is the fucking biggest band in the world, when you're, in your 16-year-old brain or whatever.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, wait a second, and then you come back, you come and tour and play the same room, like whatever, 10 years later, and you're like, oh, I'm just like that guy,
That's, those are kind of the full circle moments that I've been trying to like make myself acknowledge as the years go on. Because obviously Orthodox been touring since 2013.
Yeah.
We probably like to be playing much larger rooms more consistently, but sometimes nobody's trajectory is a straight line.
Sure.
And that's what I have to remind myself is that I saw Bayside play the small room at Rocketown. I saw, Whitechapel, like I said, in the Muse, and these bands that are just massive now. I looked up to even then, and was right to. Those bands have just continued to crush for their entire careers. But to remind myself that, like, if you flip the perspective, we are that band now.
Yeah,
is a really cool thing to acknowledge.
Sure. Yeah,
especially when you get to play. Like, we got an awesome opportunity to end this year at Christmas Burns Red, and it was like 3,700 people.
Yeah, dude,
something outrageous. Or even I don't know if you were there when we snuck on the stage for Furnace Fest this year, but like,
saw that.
That was like one of the coolest moments of my career. It was like, we got to play 8 minutes in the middle of a No Cure set, and people lost their mind.
It was sick, man. Yeah,
and that to me was awesome because I grew up like watching the videos of like the surprise sets for TUI. Suddenly Brendan comes up and does Turnstile songs in the middle of their set when they're overseas or something, or Naysayer hopped on and played a set in the middle of a show that I went to in Atlanta once. Like, things where I was like, oh, this is so cool because people love these bands and like they really care. And then before we did that little set, in my head I was like, I hope people care. Everyone's here for No Cure.
Good,
like,
man.
They just had this huge,
like 40 minutes or something. Yeah.
Well, they had 40 minutes, but they just had this like massive spotlight putting on them for that whole incident with the stabbing stuff. Then they like triumphantly were like, we're still going to play 2 sets the next week. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Crazy. And I'm like, I hope people aren't like pissed that like, hey, they didn't get to see Incendiary. Now they got to pick between No Cure and the Showdown. Yeah. And then if they're at No Cure, if suddenly this other band that isn't on the bill is like, we're going to take up some of their time, I hope they give a shit. But it seemed like people were
sick, man.
Really stoked. And I was like, this was so much cooler than I thought it was going to be. Like, it just, moments like that, I'm like, man, we are not a big band, but
people care.
It's cool to know. Yeah, it's cool to know people care. We're already so much further along than what my original goals for this band were.
Sure.
That I just have to remind myself, like, it is all victories from here.
Yeah. Yeah. Those, obviously the Furnace Fest set was sick. I was like, I think I went to the bathroom or something during the No Cure set, and I came back out and you guys were out there. And I was like, what is this? I was like, who are these guys? But then, but then I was like, oh, okay, never mind. It's great.
Yeah.
It was fun. But like the pictures and videos I've just seen from Instagram from the Christmas Burns Red set you guys had, I was like, that's fucking cool. Doing the little like 4-day tour with y'all, be like, God, these guys are cool. Their music's cool. So it's cool to see when cool and good people get like their flowers like during in the middle of it. So
thank you. Cool. I appreciate that. Man. It was, those 4 shows were sick. But yeah, we were doing those 4 shows. Obviously, the Ghost Inside canceled that whole tour with like 3 weeks before day 1. So we were kind of handed a real shit sandwich. And thankfully, other Alabamian? I don't know. Alabamians and Gideon were also on that tour with us. And those are old friends of ours at this point. And they were like, hey, let's just throw some shows together. And it was in places like Covington, Kentucky, and where else did we play? That was like Albany, New York, places that like you don't always see shows go to.
Yeah.
And so I was like, we haven't played some of these places ever. And then we have 2 weeks to push these shows.
Yeah.
And so we did those 4 shows with like, Wheel of Steel, Terminal Nation. And we were like, we have no idea what the next month is going to look like for us.
Sure. Yeah.
And those 4 shows were unreal.
They were sick. Yeah.
They were so sick. Funny side note, I stole this from this little mug from that kind of racist venue in South Carolina, that weird sports hall that had like the all the white people trophy case.
Yeah.
And then, like,
Oh,
this
yes,
rim,
yes. It was
like the case behind I think y'all's table was like this big bag of cotton.
Yes.
And I was like,
it was like a historic display or some weird.
I was like, this is good. This place looks like they were really mad when black people got to play sports. That's what this felt like.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had a shit ton of these in that little kitchen. That was our green room, and I was like, I'm gonna take one of those with me. But yeah, those 4 shows were dope, and we had a great time. Obviously, I mean, dude, Wheel of Steel, you were in the hoodie. I'd seen them a couple times, but like day 1 in Knoxville, they like started, and I was like, God damn, this band is good.
They're all sick musicians, and whatever. I'm in the camp, so I'm a little biased, but
that band is so much. I hope people get the chance to see them, because I think it's another situation similar to what Orthodox has been throughout the years, where people are like, oh yeah, the record's cool, I enjoy it, but then they see it live and like, oh fuck, this is good.
Yeah.
And I hope that they get more opportunities in the new year to get out more, because they are super talented. Super, super talented.
Yeah.
Anyways, still trying to answer the same question. Like I said before we started, I ramble.
No, I love it. It's all good.
We had no idea what these 2 weeks with Gideon were going to be like.
Right.
And they crushed. I mean, almost every show was close to full capacity.
Yeah.
We did 2 one-off shows in Indianapolis and Little Rock. Little Rock sold out beforehand. Nice. Indianapolis probably would have been sold out if they were true to what the capacity of that room actually is.
Yeah.
But what was funny is, like, we played this place called Wildfire. This guy named Brady booked it, and very, very last minute we show up, and it's just in this back room of this restaurant that they're renovating. And he told me it's a 200 cap room, and I walked in and I was like, fucking where? But
if you go all the way to the ceiling, if you just get on people's shoulders,
sure. Yeah. And he walks in and he goes, oh, that back wall wasn't here the last time I was here. I was like,
oh, Brady. Oh, no, Brady.
So that explains why this is a 200 cap.
Yeah.
Quotes, air quotes. And that show, we'd played some good shows in Indianapolis. Yeah. Every time we'd ever tried to headline there, just flopped. Every time. Talking like 30. Ask Nick Chance the next time you see him. What was it like playing Hoosier Dome with Orthodox? Yeah. And I'll bet he'll say bleak, because it was. But so when we showed up and it was crazy packed, crazy reaction. I was like, this was the coolest Indianapolis show we've ever played, and we had 10 days to push this.
Yeah.
So to go through all that with these wins that were. The whole point of this tour was, let's get rid of these 32 merch boxes that we ordered.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, we had like 6 boxes left. Got to play the biggest. I think maybe more people saw us at Christmas Burns Red than even the shed at Furnace Fest. Because like the room when you walked into Christmas Burns Red, I was like, it was basically like the shed sized, but even
like a
wider.
ballroom or something. Yeah.
I mean, truly, it was so big, and to the point where I walk in, I'm like, there's no way that this fills up. There's just no way, and it did. And I was like, that's insanity.
Do you get like pre-show anxiety of being like, fuck, this room's too fucking big, or like shit like that, where you're like, I don't know.
Not about playing. I do get worried that it's
but like people filling out. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I can work a room just fine. I've been doing it long enough.
Right.
It's more so, okay, is the challenge going to be figuring out where the pockets of people are on this huge stage to interact with? But then by the end of the first band, it was nuts to butts all the way up. Like you couldn't barely move. And so then my worry, it's never really about performance as much as just like, I hope our shit works.
Yeah.
And had no real issues. And I think what was really cool for us with that show is that we worked that room the exact same way that we would play to Insanity Skate Complex or name a floor show that you just saw us at, And we played it the exact same way. I said the same things during the breakdown. Like everything that we have planned out in our brains, we did the exact same way. And it worked just as well from playing to 200 people in that box of a room with a literal skate box as a stage to
that's great.
Almost 4,000 with a full production. And the only real difficulty for me was I'd never had to unwrap my mic cable from somebody's pyro cannon. But that kept happening, and I was like, man, this seems like it needs to be exactly where it is, and I have moved it a lot. So I hope they check that before they start.
Nobody got like a James Hetfield, like,
it
fireball.
We were all good. I kept like being like, oh man, I gotta really stop doing that.
Well, it's like, I think for people who've toured around, it's easy to spot, like, nobody likes a person that's like whining about the people that are there, like the lack of people that are there or whatever. So it's like, I don't know where I heard this quote from, but it's something I always repeat. It's like, you play to the people that are there, you know, you're not playing for the people that aren't there, you know.
100%.
It's like, but you know, I think that's just a tell of people who have been around the block and have toured and played.
Sure. But it's also, like, we played some shot shows in the last few years.
Sure.
And I mean, we'll probably play some more again. It's just the way that the world works, and that's fine. But like, we played El Paso to 40 people, and it's a decent sized room, and there's like a barricade in front of the stage, and the stage is really tall. And so, like, I even said beforehand, I was like, look, I don't care, this room's not filled up. You guys are here. The entire purpose of these shows is energy and interaction. So, like, don't take the fact that no one's here with you as a meaning for you to stand around. Yeah. Have fun, whatever. Yeah. And the show was crazy. People were like shaking the barricade where I thought we were going to get in trouble. Like, it's nuts. And you can only, it's just like you said, you can only please the people that are right in front of you. So, like, don't treat if you're expecting 100 kids and 50 show up, don't treat those 50 like they're not enough, because they are still there. Right. And also, at the end of the day, most of our money doesn't come from the door. It comes from selling T-shirts. So if you work those 50 people hard enough, man, you're basically just a salesman. So hey, you really liked this design before. Wait till you hear how cool it sounds when you play, and I bet you'll like it even more after. So, yeah.
It's how do I say this? It's cool to be around, like, touring with, because, you know, you tour with people, you don't really know them before you actually, like, do the thing, unless you tour with them before. And so it's cool, like we had an incident with y'all's van, and like, but everybody in the party was like cool with it. Everybody's like, okay, well, yeah, this shit happens, you know, we got to figure this out. And so it's like, I'm sure you guys were stressing a lot, but it was cool to see everybody else in the party, the touring party, to be like, shit happens, you know?
Yeah. And very thankful to be, I mean, we were super fortunate of the situation that, like, the vans even had a trailer hitch, because, like,
we didn't have a trailer hitch. We didn't have one. And then
Toronto Nation had one, but, like, we're also, like, neither band brought a trailer. So it was like, okay, one of them has a trailer hitch and doesn't have a trailer. Had they had a trailer, it would have been fucked. Like, I don't know what we would have done. So, it just, sometimes shitty situations end up just working out because people are there to support you. But, like, it was stressful. It was a bummer because it's like, I know that we're going to be fine, but it's like, it was like 12:30. We had just played that crazy show in Augusta. Like, that show was so nuts. We're riding high. And then all of a sudden, Mike hits the gas pedal while we're, like, shifting up, and it just goes, and nothing. And I was like, oh. And right in that moment, I was like, it's going to be a really long night. that was what I was bummed about. I was like, I'm tired. I was about to crawl in my little bunk back here and just get comfortable. Now it's going to be a really long night, and it's cold. Yeah, just a whole rigmarole of different things that just unavoidable, and it wasn't our fault. And it turns out, guy who owns it had the van towed back up to Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Wasn't the transmission. Just to fill you in on that, it was a computer issue. But the guys the dealership that we left it with was trying to say it was the transmission, and they were going to charge him like 10 plus grand to fix it. And then he was like, I just don't feel like that's right. So he had it brought back to his dealership. They're like, no, the transmission's fine. Gosh. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Gosh, so yeah, could have been a lot worse for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those like just the story of the road type stories or whatever. Just chalk it up to.
Yep.
Yeah, it comes with the territory, you know.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So you said you guys are working on a new album. Is that a thing? Can you talk about that at all? Or
sure. New record. We recorded it back in April of this past year, so 2024, with Randy LeBeau, who did Learning to Dissolve. He does everybody's records these days, it seems like, but he is truly the best. So recorded that. The first song of our set, if you saw us at all this year, every show except for Aura Fest in March, we opened with a brand new song. That's going to be on the new record. I think we're starting the rollout for that in March, I believe. We're shooting some music videos in this coming month, January.
Oh, yeah.
Doing one with good old Nick Chance. We're doing one with Eric Easterday, one with a guy named Anthony Altamura up in New York. He's up in Long Island, I believe, on Long Island. Yeah. So super excited for that. I can say with full confidence it is our best album. Every band always says that, but like we felt we had the perfect, quote, perfect product with the last record. Started playing it live and realizing, okay, reel this back, push this forward, do that and the other. And we really just honed in on what our strength was from the last album and wrote this one. And I think this is, like, Orthodox has always been a band where it's like, once you see it live, you get it. I think this is the best representation of what we are as a live band on record.
Nice.
And on top of that, I went to a guy named David Benitez for some vocal lessons before we went into the studio, and I can say with confidence, it is by far my strongest performance. So it is, I'm very excited for people to hear it because it is very obviously Orthodox, but everyone leveled up. Truly.
Hell yeah. That's sick. Going to like a vocal guy, are you like, I would have like anxiety and be like, fuck, this guy's just gonna rip me to shreds. Did you have that? Or are you like,
if he needs to rip me to shreds, that means I'm doing something really wrong.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, I mean, I don't go to a vocal coach because I'm doing everything right.
Right.
I went because I was tired of touring and having days where I couldn't talk. I was tired of just not having my full voice, really. Yeah. And also, it was one of those things where, in terms of longevity for the band's sake, like we're 10 years in, and I was, always improving because I was getting close. I was already getting close to, like, there'd be shows where I did it the right way and I'd feel it, but I didn't know how I did it. So the next day I'd come out and try to replicate it, and it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And what David showed me was I was pretty much just using you have two separate vocal folds, and I was just pulling from the wrong one. I was pulling from my higher folds up here. Day one of it was like, hey, send me a video of what you think a video where you feel like you really sound good live.
Sure.
And what do you want to sound like? And I was like, I want to be as ferocious and aggressive as like first 2 Slipknot albums. Corey Taylor,
sure.
Iowa, self-titled. That's what I want to be. And he's like, cool, that's called false chord screaming. Here's how you do it. And just broke it down into, this is how you activate. Here's an exercise to activate your false chord. Here's how you can, he's like, it's going to itch. It's going to be scratchy for a little while because you're breaking in a new muscle. So do that for a week. Came back and took another lesson. Cool. Now we're going to add this in. Do this, this, and this. Came back for a third lesson. Cool. Now you're going to, he had me like, now that you know how to incorporate this voice for the sake of inflection and really actually pushing your voice with it, we're going to start reading articles going in and out of that voice. I didn't have time to do that, but anytime I would drive anywhere, I'd read exit signs, license plates, whatever, and just do it that way. Yeah. And then we went in to the studio, tracked a song. First song that we tracked was this song. It's going to be track 3 on the record. It's called Dread Weight. And Randy looked at me and was like, I can't believe that's you. Like first song through, he's like, I genuinely cannot believe that was you. And so that was a really cool feeling. Like, oh, I did this. And then we tracked for like 3 hours. Voice was fine. Could talk totally fine. Next day in, we tracked the song that we played, that we opened with. Totally fine by the end of it. I was able to just go through to the point where I had never done an album where I didn't have to go back and track vocals after everything was done. Even with Learning to Dissolve, album was wrapped in August of 2021. I had to go back in October and track vocals. Yeah. So like fly back to New Jersey to track more with Randy. Let it take its course. I tracked vocals for like 2 months. Sounds of Lost tracked for like 3 months. Just because I would get in, and what David Benitez showed me, which was really important. I was like, look, when we play live, I got it. I know how to make myself make these sounds. And I know that if my voice is a little weak one night, I just rely more on my performance and how I act on stage, and nobody's going to know, nobody's going to be any the wiser. Right. And he was like, cool, the reason that you're not able to produce those sounds is because it's just like any muscle memory. If you're only practicing it when you're performing live, that's when you're loud. You've got people watching, your adrenaline's going. Yeah. And in that, he was like, you've got to learn to do it and be comfortable doing it in a sterile environment, because tracking vocals is me and a guy in a room with a computer. Way different. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And so it's like, that's where technique will make you to where you can replicate those sounds and get it to sound like you want. Yeah. Because there's a lot of takes. I mean, our whole second record, I don't hardly like my vocals on it at all. There's so much of Sounds of Loss where I'm like, oh, that sounds awful. Yeah. There's even stuff on the last record now when I like hear myself perform things from Learning to Dissolve. Yeah. And I go back and listen to it, I'm like, oh, that was not that good. And like, that's genuinely the difference that this album is. And so being able to go around my house making noises, because I would never practice before because I didn't know how to do it without hurting my voice. And it's like every other profession that I did, I needed to talk. And I was like, I can't not have a voice or I won't be able to do anything else in my life. And so having the confidence and the know-how to do it throughout my house and make these noises and really practice it in my car, things like that. It's the first time I've been doing screaming, quote, professionally for 12 years. Yeah. Never been able to do that before. And so it was just a very liberating feeling to like go into the studio, not try to like fake this adrenaline, like turn all the lights off, like let's fucking get into it. Like, no, it's like, oh, it's 11 a.m. Open the window so we got some natural light. I'm gonna sit on this rickety chair and hold the microphone. And I sounded better than I ever had. And then went on tour like 4 days after the record was done. Yeah. We got home, went on tour with Boundaries. It was Boundaries, us, Kanashi, No Cure. Tour crushed. Naturally, we played some older songs. I slipped back into old techniques here and there as we performed, because I hadn't done those techniques jumping around on a stage yet. And so I was like, I'm still not all the way there yet. Went back to David like, hey, what are some warm up and tear down techniques I can do? What are some things? Why is this happening? And he was like, it's all because of your breathing. It's like, you're just pushing too much air, this, that, and the other. And that was just, from there, it was like, oh, cool. Focus on when you yell, no air comes out of here, out of your nose. And then those 4 shows, the Gideon shows, I had it the whole time. It was the first time I'd ever done a whole tour. I was like, man, I fucking got it.
Damn.
And it was crazy.
So before, did you feel like you're missing something and you're like, you seeked out this David Benitez guy? And
yeah, I didn't want to go. The pressure of going in the studio, like I hated tracking vocals. I hated it. It was my least favorite part of being in a band was creating the physical piece of music that was an album. It was my least favorite part. I love writing lyrics. I love writing vocal parts. I love performing the vocals. Hated tracking vocals. And that stress was from knowing that I sound really good when we start. It's a ticking time bomb until this just stops working. And going into it now knowing that I know how to do it, it just relieves that stress, which relieves your tension in your vocal cords.
Yeah.
And just produces an easier product. It makes the whole experience easier. It makes me, like, if you listen to the first few releases of Orthodox, which you can only find on Bandcamp, it's a lot of like hardcore music. It is, we wanted to be fast foundation. And then we started writing Sounds of Loss, and me and Tyler Williams, he plays guitar and counterparts now. We wrote Sounds of Loss together, me on drums, him on guitars.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, we've been touring for 4 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're already kind of leaning new metal. I'm going to try to do more talking because I know I can sustain my voice more if I'm talking more.
Yeah.
And that's where that style came from. Let It Take Its Course, I tried to lean into that even more. Didn't work that well. It's fine. It is what it is. Learning to Dissolve was like the perfect mesh of both. And then having set myself up for that style gave me a lot of leeway live to where if I talk through things, it's expected. That's what I do already. But then also going in with this new album, there is barely any talking. It is like aggression the whole time.
Nice.
And so to be able to do that and now know that I can do that opened up such a wide variety of how I can deliver a vocal part that like even writing the stuff now is easier because I don't write something out and be like, how am I going to fit that in there? How am I going to do this? I can't reach that part. What can I do different? I have a different range and dynamic that I can actually shoot for new things with. That's exciting because I know that I can do it and I can replicate it live. And so it's a very genuinely, I've already said it, but liberating feeling. Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's so live. You've got a new vocal warm up and a cool down.
It's not even so much new as it's just like, oh, do the thing that you thought you were supposed to be doing, but now I know the right way to do it.
Okay.
It was just, it was so much of what I was doing wrong was allowing air too much air to come out at once, which then exasperates your vocal cords and all this different science stuff that makes total sense now that it was explained to me. And I was like, oh, okay, so stop breathing out of here, only let it come out of here, and stop going like just let it stop, let it cease right away, and it changes everything.
Yeah, so weird to just little things, little adjustments. Yeah,
quite literally micro adjustments, but I was already so close, and just that right there made it to where I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah, so I don't know, we're coming up on 50 minutes here. Wow. So Steal This Adam, were you a big System of a Down fan?
Yes.
Hell yeah. Well, do you remember the first time you heard System of a Down?
Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4.
Hell yeah. What was this? Shimmy?
Shimmy. Yeah. That was the first time I heard it. This was, growing up in a conservative Christian household. I didn't have a lot of access to alternative music.
Sure.
But that playlist had so much on it that I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And then I don't think I heard anything that I knew was System of a Down again until I heard BYOB on the radio.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? Found their MySpace. And of course, back then, MySpace, this was before like MediaFire and LimeWire. So people would make a lot of other fake MySpaces with bands' other songs on it.
Sure. Yeah.
So I just kind of scoured through, and then I was like, oh, this is the same band that sings the I Want to Shimmy, Shimmy, Shimmy song. I love that band. I love that song. And I started really diving into it and fell in love with the band and still didn't have full access. I think I was able to download shitty MP3 versions stealing from
ruin your family computer. Yeah,
pretty much. But like MediaFire and such, I was able to get like portions of Toxicity and steal this album. And I think I had one like mishmash of Mesmerized, Hypnotized. That was all the songs weaved into like one random playlist. And so I always had a love for the band. And then I think it was right around the time we started writing for Sounds of Loss. I like Tyler, our guitarist at the time, loved Duran Malakian's parts.
Yeah.
And you can hear, I don't think a lot of people tie us to System of a Down artistically, like instrument wise, because we're in drop B. So it's hard to like tie that to that. But like there's so many parts on the record that would be System of a Down parts if they were in their tuning.
Yeah.
We just sound a lot meaner. And I just dove into it, and man, I listened to like nothing but like their whole discography top to bottom on like every drive I did. Like I just fell in love with it. My dog is named Surge. Like I have a absurd System of a Down merch collection as well. I don't know if you looked at the highlight on my Instagram.
No.
But it is, I can say I got rid of, given some away to people, sold some of the stuff that I was like, I don't wear this. There's no need for me to keep it. I'd rather somebody enjoy it. But yeah, it's a pretty insane collection.
What's a prized piece that you can't get rid of?
I've got 2 hockey jerseys. Those are awesome. Yeah. I've got this one that I found at this vintage shop that's not there in Mesa anymore. Now it's a place called the Meat Market, which is still dope. If you're ever at the Nile Theater in Mesa, it's right across the street. It's awesome. But they had this one that was like this weird blue and lavender logo that was like pre any official release. So I got that from that place for like $30.
Damn.
Never going to get rid of that. I've got one of the Searching for Satellite Signals shirts that I'm pretty sure Chavo himself printed.
Oh, wow.
Which is dope. Never going to get rid of that. I can't even wear it. It's too big, but I will never get rid of it. And I've got a original, just a box logo that the back says "fuck the system" that I'll never get rid of.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, that was one of the like. I remember my older brother, showing me or playing "Sugar" for me, and I was like, "What the? What? This isn't music. What is this?" You know?
Yeah.
That was one of the first like, "What is this thing?" Like you were saying, like I don't know what this is.
Yeah, it's just I think what I admire about that band is the way that they can take 2 things that just theoretically shouldn't exist together, and they can make it sound so seamless.
Yeah.
Like I realized in listening to them, some of my favorite songs are the songs where they can start on this heavy, I don't mean heavy as in like metal, but like thriving depending on this one riff, this one lyric, this one concept. and by the end of that song, you don't remember. It's so far from it, but you get there so naturally that you don't remember what it started with. And like a great example for that is they've got that song Dreaming. It's on Hypnotized, and it just starts out with this crazy, like fast, like insane riff. It's heavy, it's chaotic. It's maybe one of the heavier parts of those last two records. And then by the end of it, they are doing what Duran referred to later as like, oh, I was listening to Motown. And when you hear that and you're like, oh yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
And to be able to weave that kind of artistry and make things fit where they shouldn't, like kind of just forcing a square into a round hole.
Yeah.
And it just works. They are able to do it. And also, no great band, like truly great band, is not polarizing.
Right.
Nobody listens to System of a Down or Korn or Linkin Park and are like, yeah, they're okay. It is, you love that band or you hate that band. Like there is no in between. And that's what happens with Risk is the people it grips with a passion.
Right.
And the people it misses, it really misses. But they're both talking about you either way.
Yeah.
And that's there's not a lot of bands that take those kind of risks these days, but like
it's true.
What's one? Loathe does it really well. Omerta is maybe the craziest band doing it right now. There's when I see bands that are willing to really push the envelope,
try something,
and just take a risk. Like, oh, you don't expect this. You may not even like this, but we like this, so fuck you.
Right.
That's admirable. And even if I don't like it, I can respect that because I can be like, yo, that was not what I thought was coming. And that's awesome.
Yeah, that's Prince. I'm a big Prince guy. And that was one thing there's so many Prince songs. I'm like, I don't even want to listen to this because it's it's so weird and out there. But obviously he's got some of the best songs, like to me, some of the best songs ever written,
There's certain artists where whether you like it or not, they are undeniable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think who is it? Our bassist Shiloh hates Queen. He like can't stand Queen, and I think it's because he works at this coffee shop up in Columbus called the Roosevelt, where they like have a record stand and people play records. And somebody put on like a Queen's greatest hits album. Yeah. He said he was just back there working, and he heard one song. He's like, I can't stand this song. Heard another song. He's like, I can't stand this song. Heard like two more. He's like, I hate all these songs. What is this? And he went. It was like a greatest hits by Queen. Album. And he's like, I guess I hate Queen. And I was like, that's crazy because Freddie Mercury is a vocal anomaly.
Yeah, but all those guys are Brian May, incredible guitarist. Like,
but I get it. I can't stand the Beatles. I think the Beatles.
Really?
I think the best Beatles record that was ever made was Pretty Odd by Panic at the Disco.
I like that. Yeah, it's I'm a big Ramones guy, and so they were super into the Beatles. I'm not insanely into the Beatles, but I'm like, I get it. I understand why people, why they're one of the biggest bands ever.
Sure.
Yeah. But
I think there's a lot to do with cultural phenomenon that they are not the best to have ever done it.
Right.
But they were the first to it, which is something to be spoken for.
Yeah. 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 It's weird. People are weird.
Yeah.
Music's weird. People are weird. But music is great, and people are great too.
Sometimes.
Yeah, man. I don't know. We're at an hour here. We can go ahead and wrap this rascal.
Sure.
Adam, it's been great. I'm gonna pump all the Orthodox Instagrams and all that stuff at the beginning. But do you have anything else to tell the people?
When is this coming out?
After next year. It'll come out like probably the first week of January.
Expect a tour announcement from us very soon.
Hell yeah. Love it.
We've got a tour that is, to me, it's an anniversary for an album for a band, and it is one of the albums that got me into hardcore. So I am incredibly excited about it.
Yeah.
It is being thrown together kind of last minute, so I'm not sure when it's announcing, but I think it'll be like, in theory, the week right now when you're listening to this, It might be out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know it'll be early January when it gets announced. So we'll be playing some shows pretty soon, which is great. Yeah. We weren't really expecting it, and it kind of just fell on our lap. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Cool, let's do it. So that new album rolling out in March. It's really heavy, and it's the best stuff that we've ever written. If you disagree, you're wrong, and that's fine. That's really all I got to plug.
Hell yeah. Well, stay on for a minute after we wrap up, Adam, but you had options, so you decided to talk to me, and I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Hell yeah.